Alright guys, so yep, I'm going to be doing it. I'm going to be making a watch from DIY Watch Club. I know the last mod I did didn't go very well. If you haven't seen that, I'll leave a link to it in the top if you want to check it out. So apologies to DIY Watch Club. I've actually had this for quite a while, just haven't had a chance to get around to doing it because of some of the family stuff that's been going on, as you're probably aware of. So let's open this up and show you what you actually get. So in this particular kit, which is the most expensive one where you get all the tools and bits and pieces to go with the watch as well, but there are other ones available. I'll put the prices up on screen for the different ones you can get and probably show some pictures as well. But this is what you get in this one. So this was sent to me for free, but as you know, it's not going to change the way I do my reviews. Going to keep it 100% honest all the time, no matter what. So quickly go over some of these bits as I said earlier, but then we'll be getting right down into it. So fingers crossed, I'm not going to mess this up because I've never made a watch before. As you're probably aware, the first mod I talked about briefly earlier on didn't go too well, nearly set myself on fire. If you haven't seen that, as I said, I'll leave a link to it if you want to check it out. But I haven't done a mod at all since that. The only thing I've done is really changing out straps. I've not even changed the bezel or anything. It's literally just that, removing that Cyclops in that one video. So I've jumped right into the deep end, going straight for a GMT. But what could possibly go wrong? I guess you'll just have to wait and see. If you're wondering what this watch is I'm wearing at the moment, it's the new San Martin one. So review of that will be coming up soon, but I've got a couple of others coming up beforehand. But I'm really liking this one so far. So I'll probably leave the link down in the description if you want to check it out. And then just make sure you're subscribed so when it does come out, you won't miss it. So you can see we've got everything you're going to need in this case. It's a really good kit. But obviously if you've already got a lot of tools, you're not going to need this, and they do other options. But enough waffling, let's get right down to it, because that's why you're here. So how easy is it? Let's get into it. So let's start off with the case. So first of all, we're going to have to take off the case back and remove the crown. So we'll do this now. And obviously make sure you've got these finger cuts on so you don't make any smudges or smears and get oils and stuff on it, because obviously that is going to leave fingerprints and bits and pieces and it's just going to make a bit of a mess of it. So always make sure you're wearing them, even though they do look a bit silly. So now let's take off that case back using the provided tool again. So really easy to do, just match up the holes on the back of the case. Obviously you're going to have to adjust this, which is easy enough to do. You just do it with this little scroll wheel. You can adjust it either in or out depending on the size of the case back. And then obviously you just want to get it in on one side, try and match it up, and then just adjust the other one slightly to get it perfectly fitting. The videos are really useful. If you are going to get one of these, I definitely recommend using them. They really do talk you through it easily, step by step, and without that I probably wouldn't have been able to do this at all, especially having never done anything like this before. Obviously if you're a bit more experienced you might not need the videos as much, but if you do, they are there, so which is always nice, just a bit of a backup, just in case you do ever get stuck on any little bits. And as I say, if you've already done stuff like this before, this might not be aimed at you. It's more at people who are trying to get into the modding and stuff and building watches, or perhaps if you do like these, you can get the more basic kit where you don't get all the tools, and obviously it works out cheaper. Because I still think it's a good kit. So don't do what I do here. I actually put this the wrong way around, so if you leave it that way around it can collect dust in it. And obviously you don't want that, so you want to turn it over the other way around to stop dust getting on the inside. If it does get on the inside though, you can use something to remove it, and that does come in with the kit. So you just use this and then you can get rid of it. But ideally you don't want to be getting it in there in the first place. So next up we want to remove this little rubber gasket using the tweezers that come in the kit as well. So this is pretty simple to do. I will be doing this bit on camera, but with quite a lot of the other bits I'm actually going to do it off camera and just bring it back in because it's just a little bit easier to do. Because quite a lot of these bits are going to be quite intricate and fiddly, and doing it whilst trying to look through the camera or having the camera in the way just is a little bit awkward with the setup I've got at the moment. I don't have the camera above me, I've got it actually in front of me. So that's why I'm going to do a lot of it off camera and then bring it back in so you can see the result once I've actually done it. But you'll get the idea, despite not actually seeing me do it on camera. So next up, we've got to take out the movement holder. Again, just use the tweezers for this, it's pretty simple. A few different places you can grab it. Obviously, again, don't be using your fingers to do this because you don't want to get anything, marks or anything on it. And then this piece is the little spacer that we've got on there as well. So again, same thing with that. So next up, we want to bring the movement in, which is in this little case to protect it. So this is simple enough to do. I'll just make a bit of space, just move all this out of the way. And then we've got the movement here. So this is the NH34 because this is a GMT movement. So we'll have to remove this temporary crown. So when we're doing this, it does show you in one of the videos again how to do it. So there's a little bit you've got to press down, which I'm trying to point to here with the tweezers. Press that down and then pull out the crown. So this is one of the fiddlier bits, which is why I've done it off camera, and this is what you'll have once you're taking it out. So then we've got to put in the actual crown that comes with the watch, which again just goes back in the same way. So when you're putting it in, you have to push it in a little bit, twist it a little bit, and then it should kind of pop into place. So you'll end up with something that looks like this. Then before we go to the next stage of adding the dial, there's an important step where you've got to add this piece in before. So make sure you do not forget this bit. Again, this is something I probably wouldn't have known if I hadn't followed the videos. So now we've done that bit, the next stage is to start adding the dial. But again, because I've got a slightly odd watch here, this has got a dual layer dial. So I've got the actual front dial here, which you pick up with these little stem bits. They're going to be the bits that go into the actual case holder. They may end up being slightly bent, so you may need to adjust them slightly, which you can do with the tweezers, but be careful, otherwise you will end up snapping them. And then this is the other dial section that's going to go underneath that, which has got the loom and everything on. So that's got some holes where those pins will go through. So that one's got to go underneath, obviously. So once you've done that, this is what it'll look like. And obviously this will vary depending on what you go for, but if you get one with the dual layer dial, that's the way it's going to go. And then we'll be adding that to the movement holder in these holes. So again, those little posts will go in there, simple enough. Then next up, we need to take this section. So I initially didn't realise this actually split into two pieces, as you can see here. So make sure you do that before you try putting the movement in, because otherwise you'll have issues when it comes to access for the crown, which I didn't find out until I was about to do that section. So I had to go back a little bit and quickly do that. So now I can show you that little bit I'm on about. So if we pick this up, you can actually see there's a slot for the crown to go through. So when I initially first picked this up, that was obviously had a top section on it, so you couldn't put the crown over the top. So I was thinking maybe it was a slightly different case and you had to thread it through. But as I said earlier, that top piece actually comes off. So make sure you check that. And then we can just press this into place. So obviously try not to touch the dial, try and do it on the edge of the actual case section, so you're not touching the dial and leaving marks on it. Obviously with the other hand where you've got the finger cut on, it shouldn't be that much of an issue if you do touch it slightly, but with your other hand you definitely don't want to be doing it. So now it comes to the hands. So thankfully they do actually give you 2 of each hand. So you've got 2 second hands, 2 minute hands, 2 hour hands, and even 2 GMT hands as well. So if you do have any issues with any of the hands, you end up making a mistake, end up breaking any of them or bending them or anything, thankfully you've got a spare of each. So now let's start adding the hands, starting with the GMT. So you want to pick it up using this so you don't get any fingerprints or anything on it again. Same throughout the whole of this build. Try not to touch any of the components, especially with bare hands. Obviously with the finger cuts, not going to be too big a deal, but you don't want to be getting any oils or anything on anywhere. So just bear that in mind throughout. And then we're going to be adding the GMT hand with this particular tool that is just for the GMT hand. We have slightly different ones for the minute, hour and second hand. Well, the second hand is its own one. The minute and hour hand use the same one. But I'll show you that in a bit later. So you want to line it up so it's just ticking round to the date, well, the next date on the date window, and then line it up with the 12 o'clock. So once I've done that, test it out, make sure it's working properly. Seemed to be fine. So I was alright here. So next up we've got to do the same thing for the hour hand. Using this tool again, as I say, slightly different tool for the hour minute hand now. That's this red one. It is nice that they colour code them so you can't mix them up as well. Do appreciate that. So now loosely add the hour hand as you did with the GMT before you press it on. Just test it, make sure it's aligned properly and not going to be hitting the dial or anything before pressing it on fully. So this is what I'm doing here, just testing it out, making sure both the hands are moving properly, no issues at all. And then once you've done that, you can check using that tool again to press it down properly. Don't use too much force though, because you will end up breaking the pin, which is going to hold the second hand later on. Something that is really small, really fiddly, once you get to that, so you don't want to be causing any damage to it. And then we're going to do the same thing for the minute hand. So again, don't touch it. Make sure when you're first putting it on, it's not going to be touching the hour hand. You don't want to rub in or scratching as it's going to be going round. So check on eye level. Make sure you get down eye level so you can see if there's a nice bit of a gap between all the hands that you've got on so far. And it's at this point you also want to make sure that you're pressing them down far enough to leave enough space for that second hand when it comes to add that on top. Otherwise you're not going to have any space to fit it on, and it's going to make it extra difficult, and you'll probably have to take the other hands off to be able to get the second one back on. Thankfully I didn't have that problem so far, but now comes the really difficult bit with that second hand. And you can see just how small it is. The camera's struggling to focus on it, it's that small. So I'm going to be honest, this took me far too long. It's really fiddly, really small. I think I ended up spending about half an hour trying to get it on. Kept getting it partly on, then it'd come off, slide off, fall off. Get it to turn slightly, then it'd catch the minute hand ever so slightly, so I'd have to adjust it again. But eventually I got there. So now that we finally got that bit done, now we can just add on the chapter ring and that spacer. So you want to put the spacer on top of the chapter rings, make it easier, and then you can just apply the whole thing as one. It'll look like that. And then obviously we've just got to add that to the case and the rest of the movement then, which will look like this. So we're starting to get there now. Only a few stages left, so now we're going to remove this crown before we can add it to the case. Otherwise, obviously, it's not going to fit in. You have to add the crown back in once you've got the case on. So when you're doing this, obviously you need to make sure it's fully cleaned. So use that little buff tool again to get rid of any dust or everything. And if there's any little stubborn bits, just use the little wooden tool that you get just to knock them off. And again, clean it again with that little puff tool. And then the movement will go into the case. So we're going to do that next. And to do that, we've got these little notches on here to help you line it up with the case, because there are similar matching notches on the case. So that is handy. You may need to tweak it slightly, but it should be more or less right. And then you need to be pressing it down, making sure it's sitting flat in there, and then you should be all good for that bit. And now we need to put the crown back in. So again, make sure when you're putting it in, you just wiggle it about slightly, twist it either way, and then it should pop in again. And then we've got to test it out. Make sure none of the hands are hitting each other or hitting the crystal. If anything is, obviously you'll have to take it back out and then readjust whatever needs readjusting hand-wise. So this next bit now is a little extra bit. This won't come with everything. This is an extra customised rotor that I'm going to be adding on. I'll show you that a little bit later in more detail, but before we do that, get the gasket on and then we can add on the case back, because now we're nearly done. So obviously you've got to screw this on. Make sure it's clean, no dust in it or anything before you do that, because obviously you don't want any dust or anything in there. Put it on loosely by hand and then tighten it with that tool again, and then you're all good. So now the last step is adding the bezel. So this is fairly simple. You just peel it off and then you can just place it on. Obviously you want to do it lightly, then make sure it's lined up properly before you press it on tightly, so just do it loosely so you can adjust it if needed. And then all we've got to do is add it onto the strap and show you what the full thing's like now it's finished. So bezel action is not too bad, pretty clicky. And in terms of alignment, how are we doing? How's it looking? I think I've got it right, but let me know what you think, guys. I think I've done an alright job considering this is the first watch I've ever made. Never done anything like this before, so if I can do it, anyone can do it. Because as I say, if you've seen my previous mod video, that did not go well. So I was a little bit daunted, not going to lie, going into this one. But I'm pretty impressed and pretty happy with the way it's turned out. So now let's get a quick look and show you that custom rotor that we've got there. So you might not be able to see it at the moment, so I'll get a zoom in. There you go. So we've got the Honest Watch Reviews rotor, well, custom rotor on there. Nice little touch. Again, thank you very much DIY Watch Club for sending that. Do appreciate it. I think it does look good. And again, I'm really happy with the way this has turned out. So let's quickly zoom out and then we'll quickly show you what the strap's like, because we haven't gone into that in much detail at the moment. So it's a rubber strap. It's nice. And we have actually got quick release there as well, which is always good to see. And then we've got the buckle there, matching the case finishing brushed. We've got the D on there for that DIY Watch Club. So now let's quickly show you what it's like on wrist. So here it is on my 7-inch wrist. What do you think? Did I do a good job? Or are there any little issues that you've noticed? Also, are you interested in picking one of these up? Have you done anything like this before, or are you a complete novice like I was? I would be interested to know, but that's it for this one, guys. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.